Thank you for joining Leadership Rediscovered, a podcast devoted to all things leadership. I'm Laura Siebold, founder and president of Shine Consulting. In each episode, I interview different leaders from different industries and different walks of life to talk about their unique definition of leadership. And today, as we are recording this, it's very timely because I'm excited to introduce you to Captain Clint Blankenship, who I will refer to as Clint the rest of the episode. But thank you for being here. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that we are recording this the Friday before Memorial Day. And obviously there have been so many who have paid the ultimate sacrifice of giving their life and their family, giving that sacrifice too. And you have had a career serving in the military, and that requires a lot of sacrifice, a lot. So I'm really excited to talk to you. I want to thank you for that sacrifice. And also I'm looking forward to hearing about the lessons that you've taken from this experience.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. It's the sacrifices are the easy thing because we get to do things like this and get to kind of pass on some nuggets and legacies that people get to utilize in future endeavors. So it's great to be here. I feel honored. Super excited. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've had several guests who have had experiences within different branches of the military for, certain periods of time. But a lot of times it's, hey, I was in the Army for a few years, or I was in the Air Force for a few years. And then I transitioned into civilian life, and we heard more about their experiences, especially from a leadership perspective related to their civilian life. So one of the things that I was really excited to hear from you is just your story. And I feel like there is so much leadership that's prioritized, that's taught within the military. And also, like I said, someone who's had a career there. I think there's just so much good content that we can get. And I know you're passionate about leadership, and I'm passionate about leadership. So I can't wait to dive in. So let's just start with, tell us your story and what your role is now, but how you got there.
Okay. I grew up in Fairmont, usually because you know exactly where it is, but I just tell people it's a small coal mining town in West Virginia. Not many people know where it is, but I had pretty standard childhood. Mom and dad. Mom was a school teacher. Dad was a coal miner, and prior to that, he was a Vietnam veteran, the Marine. So I kind of grew up knowing and understanding what the military was. He didn't talk about it a lot, but I had GI Joes. I played war all the time, and it's funny looking back on it now. I was leading other kids in my neighborhood to do whatever things we were doing, and I never thought about it at the time. I was just trying to win whatever game we were playing. So that was kind of my introduction, and I always knew that the military was something that I wanted to do, to kind of see the world and be part of something bigger than myself. So I applied to the Naval Academy, and I was fortunate enough. I was a barely average, decent left-handed pitcher, and that helped out a little bit getting acceptance into the Naval Academy. So I got to play baseball while I was there, which was I never thought in a million years that it was. And
which I'm embarrassed because we're a baseball family. I'm embarrassed that I did not know that the Navy has a baseball team. You hear about the football, of course, but I did not know about the baseball team.
It's a Division I. I mean, it's Division I, but it's like lowercase d. It's not. It's the team. It's like Lehigh and Bucknell and Brown, and of course we play Army and other teams like that. But it was a great experience, and I wasn't gonna go on to play. That wasn't my dream. But as a kid, I always wanted to play Major League Baseball. But that wasn't gonna happen. But further in my Navy career, I got to live my dream of throwing out a first pitch in a Major League Baseball stadium. So it kind of worked out.
That is
so it was a different vehicle.
Yeah. You still got to the MLB.
Exactly. Stolen valor, I guess you could call that. So I went through the Naval Academy. I was commissioned as an officer. And then I was a surface warfare officer. So I spent most of my time on amphibious warfare ships,
Okay.
working with Marines, SEALs, EOD, doing a lot of kind of close in things in the
Yeah.
shore. Did a lot of humanitarian aid, disaster relief,
Okay.
search and rescue in Katrina, embassy
Mm,
evacuations, all those kind of non-traditional Navy things I got
mm-hmm.
to do, and I picked up a lot of experiences along the way that I can now draw on from my
Yeah.
leadership. And then, I kind of got stuck around. I got promoted, kept getting promoted, and I kept doing it because it was fun. People would ask me, "Hey, when are you going to retire?" And I said, "Well, when it's not fun anymore." And as
Mm,
long as I can continue in leadership jobs, in
yeah.
command, I will keep doing it. So most recently, I was recruiting. I was in charge of all recruiting in the Pacific Northwest, which is where I live now.
And talk
And
about numbers. That's a lot. I mean, again, from especially being used to being in West Virginia, small state, small towns, but I mean, you're responsible for large numbers of people, right?
yes, it was. We covered 4 states in this command. So Alaska, Idaho, Montana, and Washington. So
Wow.
anybody that wanted to join the Navy, enlisted or officer, they had to come through us. So it was a lot of travel,
Yeah.
and it was great. Meeting. That was one of the best parts about this job is talking to people and getting them interested in the opportunity. It's not like being a car salesman, like, hey, come
Right.
join the Navy. Our numbers suck. Come join. No, it's,
You'll love
I
it.
would I would lay it out there and be like, hey, this was my experience. This is
Yeah.
what, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but this gave me a chance to kind of hone some things that I did want to do.
Hmm.
And just lay it out there for kids and coaches and centers of influence.
That's
But
very cool.
after I survived my command tour at recruiting, and then I just recently picked up. I got promoted to captain, which I never thought in a million years would happen.
That's
But
awesome.
it kind of goes back to my leadership philosophy of taking care. If I take care of people, like
Hmm.
the people that are my direct reports, everything falls out.
Hmm.
They make you look good. So that was, I think that's why I was able to achieve that amount of success because of the way I treated people and the great people that I had working for me. So now I'm working. Let's see, I'm the Navy Reserve Center commanding officer of Kitsap, which is the big reserve center in the Northwest. So it's a fire hose effect right now because I'm learning all these new things again. But leadership is leadership. I just have to figure out how to massage that into this job.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm so curious as you think about even starting in the Naval Academy. I mean, at what point does the military start talking about leadership and maybe talking about their definition of leadership? And then how does that run parallel to your own definition of leadership? Is it the same? Is it separate?
It's again, I probably have to frame this with I'm a very rebellious human being. That's just the way I am. So I was very immune to the change of, hey, this is what leadership looks like. And
Yeah.
from it's day one where they force that down your throat,
Yeah.
into your ears. Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, all sorts of these old leadership
Hmm.
styles and what you want to do, and they do that to just kind of give you the wave tops of everything. So while you're at the Naval Academy, you can kind of, because you're in a leadership position there, like
Hmm.
you're in charge of other students. Like you might
Mm.
you might be a squad leader in charge of 10 people, or you might be a company
Ah.
officer in charge of 30 people. So you can kind of, they call it the leadership laboratory. So you can kind of hone your skills and feel what is good and what works for you. So when you actually get out to the fleet and you're
Yeah.
actually leading people on deployment, it's not the first time you experience that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's from day one, and I hated it. It was just like, I don't. I hate this. It was dry material. I didn't. I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't
Yeah.
ready to understand and know
Well, you're
what
probably
leadership
really
was. I
young
kind of,
too, right? I mean, at this
yeah,
point.
yeah. Well, there was only two things I was concerned about at the academy. Was like, when's baseball practice, and what are we doing Friday night? That was it. I didn't care about leadership, so I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to receive the information.
Yeah. But then where did
But
that passion, I mean, because at some point you became passionate about it.
it was, and it honestly, I was a late bloomer when that switch kind of clicked in my head to
Hmm.
where there's two things, and this, you can use this in your family, in the community, or whatever, but it boils down to two things. Do you care about the mission, or do you care about the people? So because both
Ooh,
of those have to, it's a double-edged sword.
yeah.
And I was always about accomplishing the mission. We have to do this regardless of whatever it affects the family, the individual, or
Yeah.
anything. And it wasn't until, gosh, it was probably 6 years ago. That's when I had my tipping point of, oh, that's what right looks and feels like. Because I had a
Yeah.
leader that I was his second in command, and he had this philosophy of leading with love. And if you take care of your sailors, and if you
Mm.
take care of the people, they will walk through walls for you and ultimately accomplish the mission. So having that light bulb come on was kind of my turning point. Up until then, it was always about accomplishing the task.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting because I feel like as I'm listening to you, obviously the only translation I can make is more the business world, but you see that in the business world where you have certain leaders who are very much wired about task. We have to finish this, accomplish this task or finish this project or hit these numbers. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a style. And then you have other people that are typically more focused on the people on the team and how do we make sure we have a really high performing team and a high performing culture, and those people would say if we have all of those things in place, we will get the mission accomplished. And it's just a different way of going about it. So it's really interesting to me that, like, and then for the rest of us, if we're not going through some sort of formal education on leadership, we're learning it by watching our leaders. So sounds like you had examples of both.
Yeah, and and even as a kid, I've always learned the most from poor leaders.
Yes,
Like
what not
as a
to
kid,
do.
exactly. And nothing against the figures in my life growing up, but they weren't. I'm sure they were trying their best, but
Yeah.
you know, it wasn't meeting the mark. And then
Hmm.
to get into the Navy and um, having high ranking leaders, not the best.
Hmm.
So I knew what, hey, that isn't what right feels like. And then
Yeah.
that is what, as I grew up in the Navy, I was able to take those experiences. And then when I was applying my leadership style, I would kind of stop myself and be like, oh, that's no, no, don't do that, because that's what
Yeah.
so and so did in the future. And it didn't work out very well.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. So how would you describe your leadership style now?
It's, leading, I'd say leading through love. That's,
Yeah.
that's my, that's kind of my thing. I'm
Yeah.
always, I know there's a mission, but I know that if I can take care of somebody, and
Hmm.
something as simple as like, hey, how's your family? Well, and you have to ask those second, third questions and kind of peel back
Yes.
the onion and get into the root cause of someone. Just I found out the other day there's a guy that's going to work for me. He's having issues in his marriage. And
Mm.
when he fights with his spouse, he sleeps in his car. Now,
Mm.
how's he going to be productive at work? So,
Yeah.
that's something that I want to tackle. So it's
Yeah.
it's just it's leading with love. That's
Yeah, but
I
you
guess
know
that's my
what?
best way
Like
of saying it.
that's so really interesting point that you made though around asking some of those second, third layer type questions, because I think if you just someone listening to this might be like, "Oh, okay, so all I have to do is ask my people, how are you doing?" And then they say fine, or whatever, and then I check that box and then I say, "Okay, now I need you to do
No,
this." So like I think that's an important point. It's not just the surface level pleasantry, how are you? It's like, no,
no.
really, how are you?
It that that 2 3 minute conversation with somebody will change the it could change the trajectory of their day, their life. Just, hey, wow, boss is really concerned about me.
Yeah.
And it takes, whatever percentage of your day to invest that time. it's
Yeah.
it's nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah,
And some people don't
absolutely.
do that
Well, but
because
also you're getting information that does impact people's ability to perform the task. So, I mean, that was a perfect example of, hey, listen, if I walk into a situation where I haven't been sleeping well, or if I'm sick, or if I'm going through grief, or whatever the situation is, we can pretend like it doesn't impact our performance, but it does.
100% it does. Yeah, it's one of the things people always want to say they want to sacrifice themselves for the team. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you can't do that, because you have to be, if you're not 100% for the family or the team, we're not going to be able to operate at that high level. We're all not going to be rowing in
Yeah.
the same direction at the same time with the same intention.
Yeah. I'm
So
curious though,
yeah.
have you had challenges with people being willing to open up about how they're really doing? Or is there a emphasis on like, let's be tough guys and, like, I was just
It's
curious
a
how that
stigma
goes.
that it's a long time, when I was a young officer, it was there was a stigma, a negative stigma around, um I don't even know how to describe it, but everyone was good. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm going through some stuff. I'm
But
good.
I'm good.
Well,
Yeah.
you're not.
Hmm.
Let's talk about it. And sometimes, it takes pulling someone by the ear to sit them down and be like, hey,
Hmm.
let's talk. What's going on? And there's ways to, do mental jujitsu and kind of flank them indirectly and get them
Hmm.
talking about something else, what they're interested in, to kind of open up that door on what really is bothering them.
Yeah.
It's getting better though.
Yeah, I was, thank you, because I was curious about, I could imagine, again, this is, you're talking about elite high performers who probably are taught from the very beginning about sacrifice of all kinds, and, push those feelings down because that's going to
Yeah,
get in the way of doing what we need to do. And it's going to distract us from our focus. But at the same time, I mean, I think, and that was the message I got when I first entered the workforce, leave your problems at the door, leave your feelings at the door. When you walk in the door to come to work, you're here to work, and whatever happened before you came to work doesn't exist. Well, like I said, I mean, we're emotional beings. So I mean, we can pretend like that doesn't impact us. And if we just got in a fight with someone right before we came into work, we can try to not think about it or whatever, but it's there. It's there. It's like an invisible backpack we're carrying around.
exactly. And the saying for the long, and I was guilty of it too, was suffer in silence. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you're going through whatever, whether if it was in your family or, you just came back from doing something traumatic.
Yeah.
You got to talk about it. You can't bury it down, because yeah, you might bury it down in the short term, but in the long term, it's going to fester, and it's just, unfortunately, I've seen it blow up in people's lives. So
Yeah.
yeah, talk about it, and
I'm
that's
glad.
something. Be humble enough to say, hey, there's something wrong. I want to talk
Yeah.
about it.
I'm not okay, and be willing to acknowledge that too. And I appreciate you sharing that, because a lot of the leaders that I work with, again, this is more in the corporate world, but it's the same challenge around a leader saying, I'm not comfortable having this conversation. I don't want to ask the question of how they're really doing, because I'm scared of the response and then what I'm supposed to say as reaction to that. Like, I would rather they just say, I'm fine, I'm good, we're moving on.
Yeah, I mean, I could equate that to, you driving a car down the street and it starts making a noise. Well, yeah, maybe I'll just turn the radio up and the noise will eventually go away. No, no,
Yeah,
it won't.
great
You
analogy.
got to take that. You got to take that time and invest it, and
Yeah.
it's got to be, and that's some ego tied into that bigger
Mhm.
leader that needs to be able
Mhm.
to say, hey, you know what, this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation, but ultimately, it's taking care of that person. That outweighs anything that I have going on.
Yeah, and if you really care about that person, then you're willing to have that hard conversation because it's for their benefit, not your own. Yeah, you're probably gonna. I stick my foot in my mouth every day, so I just usually say exactly your words. I'll be like, "This is going to be an uncomfortable conversation." I probably will say things that are wrong, or I'll make a mistake, but you know what? We're gonna have the conversation anyway.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. That is coming from a place of love,
Yeah.
and genuineness, and
Yeah.
people will trust you if you
Yeah.
have those conversations with them.
Yeah, that's huge too. Something that you just said trust, and that sparked a separate question for me. I think about the work that you do and the fact that oftentimes it seems like you're pulling groups of people together. I mean, you mentioned, hey, we're we've worked with Navy SEALs, and then we're working with Marines, and we're working with all these different groups of people. Or if it's a disaster recovery situation, I would imagine there's situations where suddenly you're putting a team of people together that don't necessarily know each other that well or haven't worked together for a real long time, but probably are required to trust one another pretty quickly, I would assume. And I could be wrong on that. But I mean, if
Yes.
that's the case, I would love to hear any thoughts, tips, advice you have on how to help teams build trust like that, because that could be a really tough situation from a team perspective.
It is, and I think having that conversation and that overall idea of what the overall umbrella mission is, and
Yeah.
there's a common way of working towards it, but it's also, um, you know, if you've ever heard the term decentralized command,
Hmm.
it's
Extreme
where
ownership. Did we do an extreme ownership conversation? I can't remember, but I learned that
no,
from
but
extreme
I
ownership.
love Jocko, and
Yeah.
I know him in Leif, and it's, I mean, there, that to me, that was the leadership book that I read that resonated the most with me
Yeah, it's
in my life.
fantastic.
But yeah, decentralized command, because just like, for example, when we were down in Katrina, we had no guidance, no direction. We got down there a couple days after the storm had hit, and we didn't have, there were no leaders down there. There's no
Yeah.
general or admiral pointing, hey, go do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
So we essentially took, we took maps and drew out sectors, and we took Zodiac boats, and we went house to house. So our leader kind of gave us his intent, his overall intent. And he said,
Gotcha.
go execute, stay within these rules of engagement, stay within these lines, these legal limits that won't end you up in Leavenworth.
Right.
Go do this. And so
Yeah.
he gave us the breath to operate how we saw fit. So
Yeah.
he trusted us, and we trusted him. So kind of,
Mm.
there's there's a lot of risk there, but you
Hmm.
have to be willing to accept some of that risk in order to build that trust and build those
Yeah.
relationships with people. So that's kind of, just in that one specific example, that's kind of how we operated.
I like that. Like giving that overall, okay, here's where we're going, and being clear about that and clear about the boundary lines. But at the same time, I am trusting you, and I'm giving you trust to do what you will with it. But I'm giving you that trust that you can determine the best course of action, that you've been well trained, that you have good intentions, that you're going to do the best work that you can do. And I always feel like when someone gives me their trust, I am much more inclined to trust them back.
Yeah, because you don't want to let them down.
No.
You want to be in their best, be in their best viewpoint. And it also works with kids. Like
Yes.
you tell kids, hey, this is what we're doing today. This is
Yeah.
our overall. We want to have a bonfire in the backyard and do s'mores.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys got a bunch of things to do. I'm not
Mhm.
going to tell you how to suck that egg,
Mhm.
but you guys figure out your chores
Yeah.
and kind of trust that they'll do it. And then you can have that follow on conversation. Hey, we're not doing the bonfire because, well, this, and this.
Yeah, it's funny. I just had that moment driving up here. I was talking to my son on the phone, and I was like, "Hey, this is something that needs to get done while I'm gone doing the podcast, and then, here's what we'll do when I get back." And he texted me a little bit ago and said, "I forgot to do it." And so I just texted him back and said, "Okay, well, it still needs to get done. So what are your ideas for how to get it done?"
That's
So
good. That's,
we'll
that's
see
giving
what
him
happens.
that's giving him some creativity to
Yeah.
do it his own way. So next time that rolls around, he's going to be more likely to do it his way, not
Yeah.
necessarily you lay it out. And that's where centralized command comes in. Hey,
Yeah.
you have to be there side by side with him, telling him steps A through
Mhm.
Z. And if you're not there, he's not going to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I make a lot of connections between parenting and leadership, which is, I feel like there are a lot of
It's the same
parallels
thing.
there. I mean,
It's the same
but
thing.
it's
Yeah.
true. And I think it's hard sometimes, especially from a parenting perspective of like, you start out doing everything, I tie your shoes for you and I do all this stuff. And so, but you're right. Then suddenly they're 14 years old and you're like, wait a second, I shouldn't be tying your shoes anymore. Like you should be able to, I don't tie his shoes just for the record, but I probably would if he asked me to. But no, you have to really, give more of that autonomy, and which is
Yes.
hard. And again, in the adult world, it's the same scenario where, we hear about micromanagement all the time. I mean, it's giving up some of that control. It's creating more risk sometimes, or opening yourself up to more risk. And it can be scary for people. They'd rather do the centralized approach of, if I'm controlling everything and how it gets done, then I know
Yeah.
it'll get done my way and the right way.
Yeah. And all that, man, all that is tied back to ego. All that is people's, if I'm not there to lead, it's not going to get done. And that somehow, I'm not, Andrew Huberman, or know how the brain works and all that, but there's something in somebody that gives them that self-worth, that they are the long pole in the tent, and
Yeah.
they have to be there, barking orders, being there. And
Mhm.
that I, for me, I tell everybody, I want everyone in here to outwork me and take my job.
That's
That's what I
awesome.
want. That's what
That's
I'm
awesome.
training you to. Because everybody's replaceable. I'm replaceable,
Yes.
and I want you, because that is a disservice to you and me training you to be my replacement and a leader. So I'm not going to be up there on the pulpit pointing
Yeah.
and barking orders.
Yeah, but what a legacy. I mean, imagine being able to see people who are super successful in whatever definition they want to use for that, but knowing that I got to take part in that. And for me, knowing that, hey, maybe somebody has a higher job title or higher pay grade than I do that once worked on my team, I consider that a success. Like that's a win for
Yeah,
me, of like, hey, I did my
absolutely.
job. I did what I was supposed to do to help get them to where they needed to go. But you're right. I mean, ego can take a hit on that one, because it's like, well, what about me? And but at the same time, like it depends on how you define leadership and what you think the role of a leader really is.
Yeah, it's my definition of leadership has changed throughout the years, and it's, for the longest time I thought leadership was getting, it sounds horrible, and this is probably why I wasn't successful at it. It's getting people to do things that they don't want to do. That was my definition of leadership,
Yes.
and it is true to a
That
certain
is a
extent,
definition of leadership for sure.
but uh, you know that has evolved into empowering, inspiring, and motivating people to do their job and to do what they're good at even better and in even more of an effective way.
Yeah,
That's what my
I
uh,
like that.
I'm glad I changed it, because the first one was pretty bad.
Well, and thanks for being honest about it. I mean, that shows humility. That shows leadership, being able to be like, you know what? This is something that I used to think, then I learned. And I love the quote. I think it's Maya Angelou. I can't ever remember. And I love the quote, but it's basically do the best that you can with what you have at the time. And then when you know better, do better. So I feel like you really acknowledged, hey, listen, this is what I feel like was at that time made sense to me, and probably was something you were taught out of, I definitely think it is a leadership style. But then as you started practicing it in real life, in real time, you probably discovered, oh, wait, actually, there's a better way. And why would we not do the better
Yes.
way?
Yeah, and a lot of that came from failure,
Hmm.
struggles, and pain, and doing stuff the wrong way, and you know, touching the stove and realizing it's hot, and like, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I need to find a different way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. How does feedback work? Are there specific feedback channels, or how do you get feedback as a leader in terms of how you're doing, and who gets to decide whether you're doing a good job from a leadership perspective or not? I'm so curious about that.
For me personally, it's everybody. Like
Yeah.
I had a conversation with some of my junior sailors, or soon to be junior sailors yesterday. And I said, hey, I know I have these Eagles on my uniform.
Mhm.
I'm the commanding officer. I have the pink slip to the car,
Right.
but I want you to know that if you in any way, shape, or form, you feel that I'm not meeting the mark, or that you think that I could do better, or I'm doing something wrong, or you see something, egregious, that reel me back in. You have
Mhm.
that freedom to say, hey, sir, check yourself.
Yeah.
You're going down the wrong path. So having them having them provided that opportunity to criticize me, I think is a great feedback loop. I mean, there's other
That's
ways of,
cool.
more formal ones, but
Yeah.
like I said, hey y'all, if I'm jacked up, tell
Yeah.
me. You
Tell me.
I trust you. Yeah, that's because I will do it to you. I
Yeah.
want you to do it to me. Like I
That's
said,
really
I
cool.
I know I need a haircut. I get it. I, trust me. I look like a hippie. I get it. But trust me, I'm gonna have a haircut tomorrow.
That's
Just the
awesome.
little things like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, to give that buy-in, to
Yeah.
that they have that open door to approach you if they feel like you're not rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, but I appreciate that because we used the word realness earlier, and I think that does demonstrate realness. And although I mean, I'm sure it's hard sometimes because there is a chain of command, and people are taught to follow that chain of command. So by you saying, "Hey, listen, I'm regardless of how the chain of command works here, I do want to hear and I do want you to catch me." I mean, that's showing that I am a part of this team too. And I want the team to be successful, and I'll do whatever I need to do
Yeah.
as a leader to make sure it is successful.
Yeah, it's hard, it's hard to do that when being the rank and I still can't believe it, but being at that rank,
Mm-hmm.
there's that's what they see.
Yeah.
That's all they see is
Yeah.
you're the boss. It's like, no, I'm part of the family. Just treat me as your brother or sister
Yeah.
that you would.
That's huge. And probably not, I would assume, how all leaders handle it. So depending on
No,
who
no,
they
there's
came from before they come to you, it might be like, whoa, this is really different.
yeah, and sometimes that takes people uh uh a little bit of time to gear up
Yeah.
for that leadership style. Like, oh
Yeah.
well, and that's a fear and anxiety when you have a new boss coming in. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh God, what are they gonna, what's gonna be the pet peeve? What's gonna be?
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought my biggest pet peeve. This is so totally random, but I think you'd appreciate this from where you are. My biggest pet peeve is when we were on deployment and we got a shipment of ketchup in, and it was Hunt's ketchup. I lost my mind.
Yes.
I never thought I never thought that would be the straw that broke the camel's back. And I was like, no, this is terrorist ketchup. I do not want it.
Yes.
Go find Heinz. I don't know what you
Yes.
had to
Come
do.
on,
Go get it.
people. We can
Of
do
all
better
things,
than this.
I shame those people forever. I
It's
was,
so true. It's like, yeah, I mean, certain fast food restaurants, order your ketchup and you open the bag and it's like, this isn't even ketchup. What is this? I do really
I
appreciate
have
that
a
you shared that. You're like my favorite.
I have a travel I have a travel ketchup thing
That's awesome.
that it's fancy ketchup or whatever comes out. I'm
Yeah.
like, no,
No.
no, I got you. Don't worry. I came prepared.
I don't know. I mean, I know you're close to Canada. I'm not sure if you've tried the Heinz in Canada, but I do find it to be quite tasty compared to,
It
like,
was
it's a
good.
little bit of a different formula, but it's pretty
Hmm.
superior ketchup, I will say.
Yeah, we took all our kids up to every Christmas. We take the kids on a vacation. That's their present. And
Nice.
last year we went up to Whistler and went skiing and snowboarding.
Oh,
And
cool.
oh yeah, I had some what is it, poutine,
Yes. Oh yeah,
the
that's
the cheese
delicious.
curds,
Yep, with the
and
gravy
I
and
yeah, I was
good
dunking that in
choice.
ketchup, and the people looked at me funny there. I was like, hey, sorry.
Doing my thing here. I love it. All right, sorry, I took us on it. I mean, you bring up ketchup
That's all
and
good.
like you didn't know that I really care a lot about
Yeah,
ketchups.
yeah. We're passionate about leadership and ketchup.
And
That's
Heinz.
it. Yeah,
Now that
cold
we've covered
cold
that.
Heinz ketchup.
So We kind of started down this road around just leadership lessons or things that you've kind of learned along the way. And I do think about, I love to talk about people. I love to talk to people who have experience and who have some scars and have been through experiences, because I just think there's so much wisdom in being able to look back and say, gosh, if I was starting out now, here's what I wish I would have known, or here's what I would have done differently. So I would love to hear your take on, if you could kind of think about, especially, I know you up until recently have been working with young recruits and all of that. Someone at that age who's just starting out, maybe getting ready to have their first leadership experience, what would you say are the important things that they need to know, or those leadership lessons that maybe you wish you'd been taught?
I think embracing failure
Mm,
is something, because people are so, they're just worried about what other people are going to think about them, what the
yeah.
consequences are. And the way I frame that with people when they're nervous about doing something, I'm like, nobody's going to die. I mean, yes, there are situations where that could potentially happen, but that's pretty extreme and rare. But
Right.
in the grand scheme of things, no one's going to remember what you did.
Mm-hmm.
No one's going to die. So, have some, again, ego.
Yeah.
Have the courage to try new things and
Mm-hmm.
fail, but not just fail. Just because you fail doesn't mean you lose. You can always learn from that and kind of change the way you're doing things to get a
Yeah.
different result. That's one of the things I try to instill in the younger generation is it's okay to fail. You're not perfect and you're
Mm-hmm.
never going to be perfect. So the sooner that you can realize that, the
Mm-hmm.
better off you'll be.
Yeah. And you're right. I think so many people, and I get it. It's a survival mechanism of why people care so much about what other people think of them. I mean, it's, we want to fit in, we want to belong to a group, and there's safety in that. But at the same time, I think there is so much freedom when you can get to a point where you're not
Feels
making
so good.
decisions based off of that anymore.
It's it's so liberating. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know when it's I don't know at what age you hit that when you're just like, I don't care. I
Yes.
don't. It's just like, because these kids, they have like these little
Uh-huh.
anxiety rectangles that they carry around their pockets, and
Uh-huh.
they're trying to do a video for the most likes, shares, and comments, and all
Yeah.
that. And that is important, but in the grand scheme of things, doesn't it shouldn't influence any of your decisions that you're trying to do to get better.
No, and it's not real. I mean, these are all manufactured stories and filtered. And I mean, it's not even real anyway. I mean, what you're putting out there is probably not real. And what the other person's putting out is probably not real either.
Oh yeah, that's why it's a highlight reel.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
get it. There's a need for that, and I mean we can go an entire I could talk an entire month on that. But I think utilizing it, specifically social media, uh to get better.
Yeah,
That's I mean, other than it's turned into basically a marketing tool
right.
for everything.
Right. Yeah, we've lost the
Yeah.
the purpose behind it all,
Yeah.
haven't we?
Yeah, and I'll stop. I'll shut up about that because I can ramble on and on and on
Next
how
episode,
evil
we'll
it is and everything. Yeah, yeah.
So we had kind of exchanged some emails back and forth um before the episode, and you'd sent some like really cool little sound bites to me. So if you don't mind, I just kind of want to touch on a few of them and
Oh
have
yeah.
you expand on them. So one of the things that you sent over was motivation versus discipline. And I was very curious to hear your take on motivation versus discipline.
Um, for me, motivation. I try not to find motivation because
Mm,
I think, and I do it. Maybe I need to go watch a little David Goggins video to get me pumped up for
yep.
something. But I think if you can somehow find the discipline to do things, you're not going to need motivation. Discipline is
Mm,
finding to knowing what you have to do. So like in extreme ownership, discipline equals freedom.
yep.
I I've got that flag in our gym at home, and it's a constant reminder of If you're disciplined to do the things that you have to do to get better, you have the freedom to do whatever you want. You can't
Yeah.
find these little micro doses of 5 hour energy YouTube videos or reels or something to have to be inspired. You have to have that instilled inside of you with that
Yeah.
discipline.
Yeah, because motivation
Motivation is
is
important.
fleeting.
It is. It is.
And each day, I mean, it's not consistent every day. So I may wake up one morning and be super motivated and to work out. I mean, that's a great example. You said gym, I might wake up one morning and be like really, really like, oh, I'm gonna get it today. And then the next day, maybe not so much. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's not as important day two. It's just
Right.
maybe I'm not feeling it that day when I wake up. So that's where that discipline comes in
Yes.
of, okay, regardless of how much I'm feeling it or not, this is, based on my goals, this is something that I need to do.
Yeah. And every day it is like I have a cold plunge, and every day it is a it's a challenge to know
Hmm.
that I'm going to be sitting in that 35-degree water for five
Ooh,
minutes, and I have to. It's not motivation that gets me in there; it's the discipline that
yeah.
this is what I do every day, and to do it
Yeah. But you know that you get benefits from doing that too, which
exactly.
is like important to keep in mind.
Hmm.
Probably
Yeah, I
as you're
mean,
in it.
motivation is good. Yeah, yeah.
I
I go
love
somewhere
this.
else. I go somewhere else. It's
You probably have to.
yeah.
Okay, I like that one. How about coach versus mentor?
Um, this was, I just recently came from a leadership course for senior officers,
Mhm.
and they talked about it. And I kind, I being older, I was the one in class that I always got zeros in participation because I didn't want to open my mouth because I didn't think anything I had to say was important.
Hmm.
Um, but they talked about coaching versus mentoring, and I looked at them and I was like, "There's no difference. It's the same." I I don't get it.
Mhm.
Come to find out, I've done that depending on what
Mhm.
outcome I wanted to do. Because mentoring is more like, me telling these anecdotes of, hey, what I did,
Yeah.
this is what worked for me. Whereas coaching is more like sitting down with a psychiatrist or somebody. Like you ask questions, you
Yeah.
force that person to find a way to whatever they're doing. So I did it. I just didn't know I was
You
doing
didn't
it.
know you were
I
doing
just
it.
I tailored it to the outcome that I wanted from that specific individual or team.
Yeah. And I mean, there's times I think that makes sense to do one or the other. I mean, but you're right. I think a lot of times that is the big distinction point is that coaching is not telling, coaching is asking.
Hmm.
And there are times where that makes sense. There's other times where it does make sense to share your experiences I mean, right now, like you're sharing a lot of great wisdom and lessons with us. This would be a very different conversation if you were just like trying to coach.
Yeah, and it's funny. Mentoring's easy because
Mhm.
why it's easy. You're talking about yourself. You're massaging your
Yes.
ego.
Yeah.
You have those experiences. You're instilling your expertise on somebody. To whereas coaching,
Uh,
you're forcing them to figure it out, and it's not on you anymore. And
mhm.
that sometimes people
Mhm.
find that harder to do.
Very hard. And so I am a certified coach and I was like walked in the door day one of training and I was like, I'm gonna be so good at this because I am so good at telling people what to do. And they were like, guess what coaching isn't? Telling people what to do. And I was like, no, what have I gotten myself into? And it was a pretty rigorous thing. And then you have to do mentor coaching after that. So you have to get paired up with a mentor coach and they work with you. And so I will never forget one of my mentor coaches telling me, you have to understand that there is no power differential in this relationship. Like you are equal to them. It is not like you're up here and they're down here. You are sitting beside them as a partner. And I was like, oh, got it. Because to me, mentorship sometimes feels more like I'm up here and like I'm
Yeah.
the
Mentors have
stage.
gray beards.
Yes.
Yeah. Sage wisdom. They have gray beards, gray hair,
Yeah.
glasses.
So that
Yeah.
ego piece, like that's huge. I've never heard someone describe it that way. And I love that because you're right. Like to be so focused on someone else and their agenda and truly just trying to help them unlock their own answers and not like, oh, let me just tell you how I would handle the
Let me tell you my
situation so I
story.
can
This is
beat
what I would
at
do. And
myself.
yeah, no. But like you said, there's a time and a place for that.
Sure.
But if you ultimately want people to grow, they're going to have to learn to do things themselves.
Yeah.
And you taking that, taking that time and that investment in them to ask those questions to point them in the right direction of that, because you know which way they need to go. You
Yes.
just have to get them to, the whole lead a horse to water to get them
Yeah,
to
but
drink
that's where
kind
that
of thing.
ownership piece comes in, right? Because then we may think we know exactly where they need to go, but if that doesn't work out so well for them, who gets the blame? Well, I'm not gonna blame myself because I wasn't,
They did it.
Clint was the one that told me to do it, so it's Clint's fault. But
Yeah.
like if we decide and we fail, then okay. I mean, hey, listen, at least I had agency over the decision, and I'm learning that that wasn't the right decision, but I would hope that people take some element of that's on me. Or maybe a little bit more ownership in making it work because
Hmm.
I own the decision, I own the choice versus like, I don't really care about the
Yeah.
outcome because it wasn't my idea in the first place.
Yeah. That's one. This is, I don't know how my brain skipped over this, but you just made me realize I think that's why I love, one of my hobbies is bow hunting.
Hmm.
And that when you're 5 miles out in the wilderness by yourself,
Yeah.
it's just you. You cannot blame anybody for your bad shot. You
Mm-hmm.
can't blame anybody for anything that you're doing out there. It is just you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why I both love and hate uh, bow hunting elk out here in the Pacific Northwest, because it is one of the hardest things to do.
Well, yeah, and
Everything
like
has
you
to
said, it's
align.
it's all on you, right? Because I mean, my son plays baseball and we've had a lot of conversations because, maybe something doesn't go well and it's like, well, the umps made bad calls and I'm like, no, we're not blaming the umps. Yes, maybe they did, but
Yeah.
like one bad call doesn't usually change the course of the game. What or, hey, I was throwing good pitches, but there were errors in the field. Well, okay. I mean, but what could you have done better? What could you have done differently? Like, let's not sit and point out because you weren't perfect and you could have done things differently. But it gets muddy. I mean, it's especially in a team situation, it's real easy. Or the coaches made bad calls. Of course, we love to blame the coaches,
Yeah.
right? So like you can
Always.
very easily do
Yeah.
like one
And
of
that's,
these.
yeah. And I think honestly, I've had this argument with a lot of people. I think baseball is one of the best life teachers because it's constant failure, whether you're pitching or batting, you strike out,
It's a
or
game
if
of
you walk
failure.
somebody. Yeah, if you might be playing in left field and you don't get a single thing hit to you.
Uh-huh.
Well, I didn't contribute to the team. I'm a failure. It is
Yeah.
the most comprehensive uh, instances of failure,
Yeah.
and to be able to go out and do that constantly, I think that's why I love it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I played softball and I'm really enjoying him being hardcore on baseball because it's just like, yeah, you learn. I think about how many lessons I learned when I played and then how many lessons he's learning. And it's a great teacher for life. I mean, you know how it is. You strike
Hmm.
out, you strike out, you strike out. And it's like, all right, get back up to the plate and
Yeah,
go again and see, and see. And the
exactly.
mental toughness that has to happen in terms of what that's like to get knocked down and get back up again and keep trying.
Yeah, and I think it's great for kids to build those calluses of
Mhm.
failure at a young age, and because they might not experience something like that in life, but later in life, the feeling that that experience caused, they will have already felt that, and they don't have to. They kind of know how to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and what it feels like to lose and win, and they still do that, which is good. They do keep
Yeah,
score, which I'm glad about.
yeah, yeah. Me too. Me too.
There are winners and
No,
losers, and that's okay.
yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
that's life.
Because there's Yeah, you don't get a participation trophy in life.
Right,
You
exactly.
13th place isn't good in life.
Yeah, I don't think there's no naval awards for that, right?
No, no. You were either effective or not effective. Those are the two awards.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so as we think about, I feel like I just want more time with you, but thinking about younger folks and just the whole conversation we just had about, participation trophies and all that. I'd love to hear your take on opportunities that you see for people to step up as leaders, or any thoughts that you have around things you're excited about or concerned about as you think about the youngest generation that's about to come in as leaders within this world.
I think a lot of people kind of they don't like that kids ask questions a lot.
Mm,
Millennials, whatever. I don't even know what the term Gen Z or whatever they are.
yeah.
They're always asking hey, what's the why? Why do I
Yeah.
have to do this? Why do I have? And then leaders get mad.
Yeah.
Why are you questioning that? Well, they're questioning it because you didn't explain it.
Mm-hmm.
If they have to ask you why, maybe you didn't explain it that well. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
you need to go back and explain why we're doing this to achieve this. So
Mm-hmm.
hey, cool, got it, we'll do it. But for opportunities, I think, you know, kids these days, they're from what I've experienced, I hate to generalize everything, but from what I've seen, they're trying to find the quickest way to have the most success with the least amount of work. And that
Ooh,
comes from that
yes.
that comes from how many times have people been pissed off? Well, my Amazon didn't show up in 2 days. This
Uh-huh.
is this is the apocalypse.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Uh-huh.
No, and I have a unique perspective on having been to a lot of countries that are
Mm-hmm.
not, nobody would want to go vacation there at
Right.
all or
Right.
even deploy to. But
Right.
having having that experience, I think, is unique for me. So getting getting that younger generation to kind of go out and see how the world lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, whether if it's in the Navy or of course I want it to be in the Navy because I'm biased, but
Yeah.
there's different avenues of vehicles to gain that perspective, even if it's volunteering somewhere that you normally wouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
Find some kind of purpose that isn't that instantaneous gratification of
Yeah.
a like ding or something like, oh, somebody just liked my TikTok video.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
What are you doing for the long term that can benefit society and the
Yeah.
community? I think
Yeah.
that's what I don't know if that answered your question. I
I
just kind
love
of
that.
went different avenues on that one.
I love that. I'm rapping with that one because I like that. I think that's a great thing for everyone to think about, and regardless of where someone is age-wise too, even not for young people, but like what opportunities. We all have the same amount, 24 hours in a day. So how are we using that time, and how can we, you're never too old to make a difference or make an impact or make things better. So what are you doing with that time?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's tough and it's hard to get an 18-year-old to understand that because
Yeah.
they have not some do, but for the majority, some have not had those life experiences that they can draw on
Mhm.
to see what that feels like.
Yeah. And I think that's huge because you're right. I mean, I grew up in a pretty insulated environment. I lived in Ohio, so we went to Myrtle Beach every summer for vacation because that's a requirement when you live in
Everybody
Ohio.
goes there. Everybody goes there.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I don't. My parents have a beach house there, and I'm like, do you
Yes.
know how far of a drive that is? The Eastern Shore over in
Just
Maryland's
what you
quicker.
do. Yes, it's just what you do, but it's like even, going to those same places, seeing the same people in the community, going to the same school and seeing the same kids. And I was very fortunate to work for a company where I got to travel a lot and see different parts of the world through that experience. And you're right, it really does put things. And then I moved to a different state that was in a very different position. And just really opened my eyes, and I'm so grateful for those experiences.
It is, and it gives you, it just shows you life in a different way. How other people, even within the United States, like people
Hmm.
down south are a little different than the people above
Yep.
the Mason-Dixon line, or wherever you determine where the North is,
Yeah. Yeah.
or in the Midwest, or down in Southern California. It's
Uh-huh.
yeah, growing up in West Virginia, like first time I got on a plane was when I left to go to the military.
Oh
That
my
was
gosh.
it was I had no idea what was going on. I was terrified, but
Yeah.
um, I learned to make my world small to get through struggle and tough situations. Like,
Mm.
okay, I remember, okay, if I just, as I remember when I got on that plane, I was in tears. I was leaving my girlfriend. I was leaving my parents. I was like, this is
Mm.
the worst decision I ever made.
Right.
And then I told myself, okay, and this sounds pretty morbid, but if I can just get through the plane ride and it doesn't crash, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And then I landed and it was
Yeah.
fine. And then I was like, okay, let me just make it to breakfast.
Yeah.
Let me just make it to lunch. And just that was just a tool in my head that I was able to, and I still use it
Yeah.
to this day.
Yeah. And in fact, I
Like what?
have actually heard that from, I can't remember, somewhere within the military, that like the whole like embrace the suck, but also kind of a just make it to lunch, just make it to dinner. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that's what it is. It's just like making it smaller, because you get overwhelmed sometimes when you think about the enormity of what's going on. Like you said, oh my gosh, I'm leaving everything behind, well, everything I've ever known, everything. And when you start doing that, of course, your brain's like freaking out. But if you're just like, okay, I'm just going to focus on the plane ride and I'm just going to survive the plane ride, then it's a lot more manageable in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did that. I have an extreme fear of public speaking. I always have. I
Huh.
don't know why. It's just terrified of it. But I got over that really quick when there was something I realized one day. Hey, your fear of that is not as important as the message that you're trying to deliver to whoever. Um,
Mhm.
and that was I got a little tested one time when I had to speak in like around 60,000 people one time at the Mariners Stadium, and they just handed me the microphone and said, "Here you go."
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, okay, as long as I don't curse, I should be okay. So let me just get through this, and
I can do this. Yep.
mhm.
And you did. You didn't die. Look at you. You're still here.
Yeah, yeah, not in jail, didn't die, no one died. It was good. I survived.
Was that when you threw out the first pitch, or was that a different?
That was a different one. I've
Oh,
done it. I've done it a few times. That was one of the cool things about in recruiting. You were kind of, dropping hockey pucks at playoff games, or doing stuff at NFL games, or the baseball stadium, where it was cool. I got to swear in 100 kids that were going into the armed
wow.
forces down there, and just
That's
kind of
really
speak to
cool.
everybody at the game the importance of what less than 1% of people join the military at any given time, and just to explain to them, hey, these are going to be your future hometown heroes, and just to
Yeah.
kind of get that message across. But yeah, it was
Wow.
terrifying.
Totally unrelated to the line of questioning, but you just sparked a question for me. And I think about companies having a harder and harder time getting people to work for them. Is it harder and harder to get people to go into the armed forces, or where is
Yeah,
that right now?
um, well, I mean, obviously the numbers, you've seen, like I've had friends testify in front of Congress on why we're, not meeting our numbers and
Yeah.
everything. And I don't know how that Ouija board goes in where they come up with those goals and numbers or anything like that. There's 100-pound heads that figure that out. I'm not that smart, but um, from what I've seen, there's always going to be that propensity to serve, because inherently as humans, we want to be part of a tribe. We want to be
Yeah.
part of a community, and there's always going to be that. But what the military, and it kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier, that what the military offers isn't instantaneous gratification. It's
Mm,
you gotta let it
you
happen.
pay your
You
dues.
gotta yeah, you gotta give it 4 or 5 years until you start to see the benefits
Yeah.
of that. And if you trust the system, it will work out for you.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's
And
interesting
it's hard to
because
tell. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think we were going to say the same thing. So go ahead.
It's hard to get that through a high school senior.
Yeah.
Like it's not, they want to start a t-shirt company, or they want to, they want to be a YouTuber. They want to, they want
Professional
to be an
gamer.
influencer. The Navy has those. If you will believe that, they have an actual gaming. I don't even know. They have people that play video games online as a
I
recruiting
can't even
tool.
imagine. I mean, I'm sure there is some really cool stuff that people can do. Like pretty much anything they want, I'm sure.
Exactly. And kind of the way I framed that, a lot of things are moving away towards unmanned vehicles, drones, flying drones, undersea robotics, more of those. And that tool and technique of being a gamer, and that, I think that skill transfer can go in to doing those missions. And they're working on that now.
Yeah. And you get to like really make a difference with it.
Yeah. I mean, unless they come out with like a Nintendo, up, down, down, left, right, a little controller from Super Mario Brothers, I'm not going to be good at flying drones.
Yeah, I know my strengths and weaknesses. That's not a world that I've ventured into, but I think it's really cool. I'm glad that there's people that know how to do it. I'm just not going to be one of those people.
I'm analog all the way.
Same.
give me a flip phone and I'm good.
Yep. I love it. Oh, this has been such a good conversation. Thank you so much for doing this. I've really enjoyed it, and I appreciate your passion, but also the experience that you bring to the table, because I think it's very inspiring and hopefully very helpful for the people listening.
Yeah, if somebody can pull out some nugget that, if something that resonates with just one thing, or even if they disagree with me on something, it makes them think about something else, and they get that out of it. That's, I feel like I accomplished my mission and did my job.
That's a win too. All right. Speaking of games, are you game for a lightning round?
Okay, yeah, always.
60 seconds to answer as many open-ended questions about you as you can. So let me pull up my timer here. Okay. On your mark, get set, go. What season best fits your personality?
Fall.
Okay. What is your most used emoji in text?
Shoulder shrug.
What book, song, movie, or podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
Extreme Ownership, and the podcast is Real AF by Andy Frisella.
Oh, I must check that one out. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
I meditate every day.
Oh, good one. Okay. Fill in the blank. I spend too much money on
elk hunting gear.
Yeah, I'm sure that's expensive. What celebrity would you want to play you in a movie?
Chris Pratt.
Good one.
I've met him a few times, and he's very down to earth, and I feel
he seems like a cool, down to earth kind of person. Okay, my timer went off. I'm going to ask the last one anyway. If you catch me by the fridge at night, I'm probably snacking what? You probably don't, because you're very disciplined.
Almond butter.
Almond butter?
Yeah, my wife buys these. They're small it's a small company, and they make almond, cashew, peanut butter, and they have like candy in them and Reese's peanut butter cups, and it's all mixed together. I'll send you the.
Yeah, that sounds, because you didn't have me sold in the beginning on that one. I was like, really? Yeah. But that sounds good.
I did it last night.
That's awesome. Thank you again so much for being on the show and sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I'm going to close this out here. That's all the time we have for today. Until next time, shine bright, everyone.